This program is designed to provide general information with regards to the subject matters covered. This information is given with the understanding that neither the hosts, guests, sponsors, or station are engaged in rendering any specific and personal, medical, financial, legal, counseling, professional service, or any advice. You should seek the services of competent professionals before applying or trying any suggested ideas. The information contained in this podcast is intended for informational purposes only and is not a substitute for individual professional legal advice. The podcast information was carefully compiled from vetted sources and references. However, R.O.S.E Resources Outreach to Safeguard the Elderly cannot guarantee that you will not fall victim to a scam. Let's talk about scams. It's the must-listen show for anyone who wants to protect themselves and their loved ones from scams. Every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on K4HD Radio, Joyce Petrowski, founder of R.O.S E, and her guests will provide valuable insights and practical tips on how to recognize and protect yourself from scams. And now, here is your host, Joyce Petrowski.
Hi, I'm David.
Staying active mentally, playing chess, those are all very important things.
I'm 72, but I'm going to keep on learning. I'm going to keep on moving. I'm going to keep on living my life.
Healthcare for David's next move. Learn more at r12health.com.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. I'm Joyce Petrowski, founder and board president of R.O.S.E Resources Outreach to Safeguard the Elderly. Don't forget to get on our website at roseadvocacy.org. You can find our social media channels at the top of the homepage. Scroll down to the bottom and you can sign up for our emailed and or mailed newsletter. We do both. Two great things with the email newsletter is that you're going to get scam information and tips and information about R.O.S E. But every Tuesday morning, you're going to get a Tuesday tip at 9:15 Arizona time. And you might look at it for a few weeks and say, you know what, I already know these tips. Well, that's great. It's reinforcement. But it also, by seeing scam information reoccurring every week in your inbox, opening up, just taking a quick few minutes to read through it, that helps reinforce your scam prevention habits, your healthy skepticism, and making it a habit. So the next time you're contacted, you're more apt to think scam. Okay, what do I need to do in order to determine if this is legitimate or if it really is a scam? So today we have a guest, Patrick Coughlin. He spent more than 20 years building teams, products, and companies that protect governments and Fortune 500 enterprises from the most sophisticated cyber threats. He co-founded TrueStar Technology, a security intelligence platform acquired by Splunk, and now leads Savvy Security, where his team built scamwise, a free tool that gives anyone an instant assessment of a suspicious message. When his 73-year-old mother was targeted by an AI-powered voice impersonation scam, Patrick turned his expertise toward a question most cybersecurity professionals never ask. Why do smart, capable people fall for scams in the first place? What he found wasn't a technology problem. It was a human psychology problem fueled by criminal organizations operating at a scale most people can't imagine. His debut book, Dark Side of the Boom, How Scammers Hijack the AI Revolution, exposes the networks behind the global scam epidemic, the psychological tactics they've weaponized, and what families and communities can do to fight back. Patrick is a Georgetown, St. Andrews, and Stanford alum, and he lives in Los Angeles with his wife, son, and dog. So let's welcome Patrick.
Thank you, Joyce. That was a great introduction. Very happy to be here.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us. Happy to have you. And I'm looking forward to this conversation because the one thing that I really liked about your bio was what he found was not a technology problem. It was a human psychology problem. I think that's where a lot of people, including the government, fail when it comes to trying to prevent scams. So You spent over 20 years in the cybersecurity protecting governments and Fortune 500 companies. So what made you shift your focus to protecting just everyday people?
Yeah, I think, Joyce, if you sort of if we take a step back and look at my career in the last 20 years or so, I think the through line or the thread is I've really focused on how bad guys use technology. I started my career actually looking at the time, this is again 20 plus years ago, looking at terrorist threats and groups from
Okay.
threats from terrorist organizations and how terrorists were potentially using the internet to launder money, to communicate,
Right.
to recruit. And then over time, that sort of parlayed into looking at how bad actors were using technology as a channel and a mechanism to target government agencies and then later enterprises to steal information, to steal money, whatever it may be. And then about 18 years or 18 months ago, 2 years ago, my mom, as you said in the introduction, got
Mhm.
one of these fake kidnapping calls
Okay.
where she's sitting at home and one day her phone rings and it shows up and says it's coming from my sister Courtney.
Oh, okay.
And she answers the phone and she thinks she hears my sister's voice,
Mhm.
and sort of a blood curdling scream and a voice that says, "Mom, they've got me." And then a man comes on the phone and says, "We've got your daughter at the local Walmart in Olathe, Kansas,
Oh,
where I grew up, and we're going to kill her in the parking lot if you don't PayPal us $1,200 immediately."
wow.
And by a lucky sequence of events and some fortunate sort of moments, my mom sees her iPad sitting on the table while she's on the phone, and she thinks to text my brother-in-law, my sister's husband, and say, but she's still caught up in it. And she says, "What are we going to do about Courtney?" She
Oh,
believes.
absolutely.
And, luckily my brother-in-law is there and answers right away and says, "What do you mean Courtney's in the shower right here with us?" And
Yeah.
so that sort of provided just enough of a spark of doubt, that, my mom was able to sort of step back from the situation, hang up the phone, something didn't feel right, called my sister, realized this was fake, and by the time she called me, um, we she was shook to the core, Joyce. Like you can
Oh, I bet.
imagine, how destabilizing that is. Couldn't believe that this could happen. How could it happen? The phone said it was Courtney. It sounded
Right.
like Courtney.
Yep.
And after we calmed mom down, what was going through my mind is, well, what has fundamentally changed in sort of the underlying economy of cyber criminals, of sort of the bad guys on the web,
Right.
that they could target little Beth Coughlin from Kansas like this, and
Right.
somebody did some work to figure out, who she was, who her daughter was, what the phone numbers were, what the voice was potentially.
Yep.
And that $1,200 would have been the starting ask for a life, and that somebody would have been really happy. It would have been a huge score for that scammer if they got $1,200 for that work. And so for me, it kind of invigorated some latent analyst and intelligence skills that I had used earlier in my career, and I kind of went down a rabbit hole, and I saw which you've been seeing for a long time, which is cyber criminals are now sort of taking the same level of sophistication and scale that they would have pointed at enterprises and governments, and are
Mhm.
now pointing it at seniors, the elderly, at
Yep.
families, at really all demographics. And so that's what really drove me to say that the threat has shifted from governments to enterprises and now to living rooms and kitchen tables of everyday
Absolutely.
Americans. And that's what I want to spend the next chapter of my life on, is helping to stop this rapidly accelerating problem.
Yeah. I mean, it's every year, when we see the statistics come out, and right, the statistics are just on what's reported. And we
Right.
know that there are so many more people that just don't report, especially in this older adult population, this the 60 plus population. Um, that don't report. So it's just the actual losses and number of victims are just exponential
Yeah.
based on, but the numbers that are reported, and you live in California, you guys are always in the top 3
Yeah.
for the statistics. You have a huge population just to begin with, but Arizona is always in the top 10, and we
Yeah.
hover right around somewhere between 4th and 6th. Um, so we don't have as big a population as California, but we have a big retired population.
Right.
And it's just, you know, I it's amazing how much information can be found online
Yeah.
about people. I don't think we realize everything that is considered public information.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's
Yeah. Well,
and there's go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I mean, what you hit on with the underreporting is actually a big part of the problem. And in fact, digital fraud is the most underreported crime in the world. If you look at residential burglary or any other sort of type of crime, shoplifting, whatever it may be, um, uh, digital fraud is exponentially underreported compared to those, and a lot of that is because of, unfortunately, the shame, and the
Mhm.
stigma that gets
Absolutely.
involved when you talk about a scam victim. And we can talk more about that, but the impact of that is this underreporting means we're under-resourced from a law enforcement perspective, we're
Mhm.
undereducated about the problem because we don't have our arms as a society, as a country, as a state, whatever it may be, around the real scale of the problem. And so part of what we advocate for, and I know you do as well, is we've got to sort of bring down this level of shame around talking about scams and fraud
Right.
so that we can really understand the full scale of the problem, and then we can start to really implement the right scale of
Oh,
solution.
absolutely. I was just looking at somebody, I'm sure you guys have those next door apps and stuff. I had gotten a notification. I had commented somebody had posted their experience with a scam, and it was that they knew from the beginning it was a scam, but they kind of just wanted to see what their game was, so they
Mhm,
engaged to a
mhm,
certain extent. And they spelled it out in the post, and I had just commented and said, "Thank you for sharing. It's always good to get this information out, and just be careful
yeah,
with engaging because they can trick you so quickly and easily." But there were people on there that were saying, "Who would I can't believe people are so dumb to fall for this." And I'm telling you, Patrick, it takes all I can do not to just rip into those people, because it's like you make a decision out of an emotional state, and then you come back and think about it logically and rationally. I think somebody else could say the same thing about you.
100%,
Exactly, and
100%.
that's what people don't they just don't think about it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
And they don't lead with empathy, and they're just very judgmental people, and
that's right,
I
that's
I
right.
hate to say it, but, you very well could be the next one on this next door app that's gonna be well, you wouldn't post because you'd be very embarrassed after you've just been shaming everybody.
Well, it's funny, when I so again, I sort of worked in government and then sort of enterprise security, and there's this big cybersecurity conference every year, if you'll
Mhm.
let me tell the story, where
Sure.
it's called R.S.E. And it happens in San Francisco, and cybersecurity people get together. And I remember about 10, 12 years ago, at the time when companies would get hacked, this was still
Mhm.
kind of a new thing. And what people in the cybersecurity community would do when a company got hacked, they would go on social media, they'd go on Twitter and kind of throw shade at the company and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe that company got hacked. What were they doing? They didn't have their policies figured out. The program must have been weak." And then at this RSA conference, the director of the FBI came and he gave the keynote speech, and he said something that was really important. He said, "There's two types of companies in the world: companies that have been hacked and companies that don't know they've been hacked."
Yeah.
And what that did is it changed the entire conversation. So now the cybersecurity community, if you started blaming the victim of an enterprise attack, it kind of showed that you didn't really understand how the attackers worked. and that maybe you weren't educated about how big and important and really sophisticated this problem had become.
Well,
And so
you
it
can
kind of
take that right into scams against, individuals
That's
and
right, and so
consumers.
that's right,
So
and so I think we're approaching this moment, and we need to turn the tide where if you say, "I can't believe somebody would be that dumb," it actually kind of says more about you,
it does.
and what you really know about the nature of this threat than it does
Right.
about the victim.
Yeah. I mean, you can look at anything with hindsight's 2020,
Yeah,
right? If you already know how the whole situation worked and everything, well, then, yeah, sure, you could say, "Yeah, I would do this." But when you're in the midst of the situation and emotional, you have no clue what you would
yeah,
do,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean, think
Um
about it like this, like if you're unfortunate enough to be in a situation I have in my life where your house gets robbed,
Mhm.
um, awful situation. Your neighbors come over and they say, "Oh my God, what can we do? How can we help?" That's
Yeah.
awful. Um, but if you're in the situation where you've been scammed and money has been stolen from you, the response can't be, "Oh, how could you be so stupid?" You know?
No.
We have to change that conversation so that
Right.
it looks and smells more like blaming the actual perpetrators of the crime,
Right.
not the people that were the victims of it.
Right, absolutely. It's um yeah, I had something in my head. I hate it when that happens. Every now and then it comes in and then
Yeah.
it goes right out. I'll think of it when we get on to another topic here, but so you wrote a book about artificial intelligence, voice cloning, deepfake videos, all of that stuff. But in the book, you say only 0.5% of scammers ever face consequences.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And I get that a lot from people. Well, are they finding these people? Are they and actually I just recently listened to somebody in Arizona that's running for one of the political offices. And um I asked the question. I said, "When are we going to start talking about scams against seniors?" And he immediately went into, "Oh my gosh, do you know that the majority of the people that perpetrate this, they've been kidnapped and they're trafficked and they're over in these other countries, and this is just," and I'm sitting there to myself going, "Yeah, that's awful, but why do you automatically go there?
Right.
Why are you not having some empathy for the people that are in your own backyard that are losing their life savings?"
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's just, and I even brought up education and they immediately went to, "Oh, well, yeah, education." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I had to sit on my hands.
Yeah. I
So
mean, look, the one of the things that I did over the last 2 years or so is I spent a lot of time, looking at the different groups that are
mhm,
behind these attacks.
yeah,
And the picture is as complex and varied as you would expect, right? Sure, there are awful situations where particularly this is common in Southeast Asia, although it's moving across geographies where
it's all over.
yeah, where people that are working in these compounds have been trafficked and scammed themselves
Yep,
to come to those places thinking they're getting some great job, and they end
right,
up, getting, having their passport taken and winding up in some like windowless cubicle where they're having to
yep.
like just scam the
Yeah, work
elderly in America.
16-hour days
Awful,
and
right?
yep,
But there's plenty of other situations where you've got, or real organized crime groups, some that have been around for a long time,
mhm.
that have, done drug trafficking or human trafficking that have now looked at the profits that
Oh,
can be
yeah.
generated from digital fraud and
They've
said,
added
"Whoa,
that to
maybe yeah, we need a
their
new business
menu of
line."
fraud.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and so there are certainly those examples, where the scammers have been scammed and they deserve attention and empathy, but let's not forget that there are also real criminals behind,
yeah.
these attacks, and they need to be certainly held to blame, and we need to talk more about how we bring them to justice.
Yeah, and it's hard also. I mean, the ones that are here in the States, right? They have, and I guess it depends on the country as well, but they have a better chance of getting caught. Our law enforcement, our lawyers, judges, all of that, they're very knowledgeable. They know how to investigate, they know how to prosecute. They're constantly getting trained in all these new avenues, the cryptocurrency, the artificial intelligence. But a lot of the scams, like you said, are in some other country. At least that's where it initiates, and that's where the main, ring of people are. So, yeah, it's gonna be harder because now you have to then start working with this other country.
That's right.
We can't just go in and say,
That's
"Hey,
right.
we're gonna arrest these people and take this down." You gotta work with these other countries, and some of those countries, it's just not top of their radar to wanna shut these places down.
And they don't have the resources, and
True.
if you look at, like, a typical, like, let's just say a phone call scam, like what may have happened to my mom or in
Yeah.
what you've talked about, on this channel, it was probably, initiated in one country through some, and I won't get too technical, but through some sort of voice over internet
Yeah.
protocol device.
Mhm.
It may then have been, transited through a couple of other countries, a couple other hops before it
Mhm.
actually got onto the US telecommunications infrastructure and was routed to my mom's phone. So if you think about the law enforcement perspective, they've got to go and work with every
Every place
country
it
that
touches.
was a transit point, and you got to get,
Absolutely.
sort of the equivalent of international subpoenas and
Yeah.
and the alignment across law enforcement agencies, and it's got to fit with their priorities, as you're saying. They have to have enough resources to then care enough about it,
Right.
and you got to do that in multiple different countries, across multiple different languages, across multiple different technology providers,
Yeah.
and so it's no wonder that it's so hard to track these folks down. It's no
Right.
wonder that, out of 1,000 scams, and scammers, a handful are actually brought to some level of justice every year.
Right. Yeah, it's kinda like the money mule, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um, it's the money mule with having not actually, well, like you said, going through taking that voice and having it go through all these other countries before it hits the United States telecom, right? And
that's right.
yeah, so
And the
it's
money is just as hard to follow too, and because it will, it will transit through a variety of different hops in different
mhm,
countries across different platforms. And as you say, with mules, sometimes those mules are totally unsuspecting. Sometimes those mules
absolutely.
themselves have been a victim of a
Absolutely.
scam.
Yeah.
And so then law enforcement, has a situation where they don't actually have a criminal, they just have a victim and
They have
another
a
victim,
victim, right,
right?
that got
And
involved in this, and that's something, that we talk about, is, you might think you're helping somebody out, and unknowingly, you're now involved
that's
in
right.
this process.
That's right.
Um, but, so what are your thoughts on why the older adults are so heavily targeted?
Oh, so there's a trope out there that says, seniors and the elderly are, disproportionately victims of scams because maybe they're not tech savvy, or maybe they're, as we talked about before, maybe they're not smart. Maybe they've lost a step,
They have some
um,
cognitive
cognitive.
decline going
And I
on.
would say,
Possible.
it's possible, but there's no research out there that suggests that. The reality is, the senior citizens in this country are disproportionately targeted, as you said, because
Mhm.
senior citizens hold over 50% of the wealth of this country, right?
They do.
So they make up about 20% of the population, but have over 50% of the wealth in their retirement savings and whatever that may be. And so the scammers know that. The
Mhm.
scammers are simply just going where the
After
money
the money.
is.
Yeah,
And
where the money
so
is.
I think that's exactly what's driving it for scammers. They know there is savings to be had. There's plenty of research that shows that actually, millennials and Gen Z, when hit with the same style of attack or hit with the same style of scam, will
Mhm.
also fall victim. the scammers just know there's not as much money there going after a teenager or a young 20 something. There's
Yeah.
just not as much savings. And
Right.
so they will put more resources, more personalization into going after a senior citizen that has tens, hundreds of thousands of dollars in their retirement savings, because they know that's money that they can access if they can crack that emotional and psychological nut effectively.
Right. Yeah. No, absolutely. And you're going to get some because this is a wide, like you said, it's 20% of the population, but you're going to get some people that know nothing about technology in this age group. You're going to get some people that know a lot
Yeah.
about technology. That's what they spent their career in, right?
Mhm.
But you're going to get a lot of people on all different, throughout that.
That's right.
And you're going to get some that don't really want to learn
Yeah.
anything
Yeah.
new, and
Yeah.
some that are okay,
Yeah.
learning some new stuff. But, sometimes I hear in our presentations and they're not meant to scare people, they're meant to provide information. And, what we tell people at the beginning of each is that, this is not a one size fits all, because we have a 36-page resource packet that talks about different things that you can do to protect yourself. And it's not a one size fits all, right? Because everybody's personal situation is different, and their risk adverse is different as well. Some people are like, I don't want to go through the process of doing this because I'm okay with this risk. Well,
Yeah.
that's their choice.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's exactly their choice. And the last thing we want to do is come in there and say, no, you have to do this, you have to do this, and you have to do this.
Yeah.
And don't do this, and don't do this, and don't do that. It's like being in kindergarten again.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm in that age category as well. And trust me, I don't want my kids coming to me and telling me what I can do and what I can't do.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My response would be, I was in elementary school and I abided by the rules. I was a rule follower.
Yeah.
I don't need it, almost 61 years old, 61 years of age, someone telling me I can do this and I can't do that. But
Right. But what I
um
think what you do is so important, because and we talk about this in the book, that, once we spend a lot of time talking about the problem and probably, scaring folks, hopefully appropriately, we do talk about solutions. And
mhm,
a key part of that is how do we how do we ingrain some new rituals and new behaviors in ourselves, in our families, and
yeah,
as individuals? And a lot of it is just recognizing that the threat has changed, and we are, seniors are, families are a target now in a way that they weren't 10, 15, 20 years ago. And it's a
absolutely.
big reason, why I've sort of moved into the everyday people side of this and the family side of this, is because there used to be a time when consumer cybersecurity was actually the big dog. And if you go back in time, and Norton and McAfee, these were these companies that were
Mhm,
kind of the icons of the
right.
early internet. And then what happened is enterprises started being targeted, and a lot of the investment and the focus shifted to how do we protect government and enterprises. As enterprises became more digital, government became more digital. There was more for the bad guys to target. There was more sort of gold at the end of that rainbow for them. But now what we're seeing is, because AI, this is not an indictment of AI. There's a ton of benefit from
Oh,
that
absolutely.
technology, but one of the side effects is it has made these bad actors who aim to look like us, talk like us,
Made it
sound
more
like us,
easier for them.
behave like us, right? This is
Mhm,
what AI does in positive ways, and helps us do things on our behalf, make us more productive. Well, it also helps those who wish to deceive us be more
absolutely.
effective and efficient. And so now they can take those tools and they can target us, individuals,
Mhm,
families, seniors, in a way that they weren't 10 or 15 years ago. And so we do have to recognize that the problem has shifted. We're a target like we weren't in the past. And so we have to find ways to sort of teach ourselves some new tricks, educate ourselves differently, so that we can really rise to the level of defense that we need.
Yeah, absolutely. So in you uh, shifting your focus, um, you came up with you and your brother. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Came up with a product called scamwise.
yeah,
Tell
yeah.
us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, so, I'm a cybersecurity guy. My brother, Ryan, he is, 5 years younger than me. He's been a consumer products guy, so he has
Okay.
worked at places like Apple and Spotify and
Hmm.
built products that are used by millions of people, and so one of the things I knew I needed when sort of turning my head to this was I'm an enterprise guy, I'm a government guy, I'm not a consumer guy, and so I knew I needed some help, and, who better to turn to, in a situation where we're trying to build better digital defense for families than my brother. And we built our first product, along with the great team at Savvy, is a free scam checking tool. And again, this is a piece of the solution, Joyce, not the entire
Yep.
solution. And we could talk more about how I sort of think about the role that technology plays alongside education and other things. But one of the things that we found is sometimes it's hard to ask for a second opinion. There are plenty of seniors and elderly that live alone, or you're caught in a moment where you're by yourself, you're moving fast,
Hmm.
and it's easy to kind of just get caught up in the moment. And what we wanted to provide folks is a very simple and easy way to start to get a second opinion on things. And so Scamwise, which is available at scamwise.com, it's totally free. You don't have to put in an email address or tell us who you are. So it's completely private. We don't ask you to register or set anything up. And you can, take a screenshot of a text message and submit it that you've gotten. You could forward an email to submit at scamwise.com. If you see an email that's come in and there's like, I don't know if this is real or not.
Hmm.
You can take a picture of physical mail, which we see a lot. You got a bill in the mail that looks like it's coming from, your local government or a medical provider that you thought you paid
Hmm.
that copay. And you can submit it to Scamwise, and what you get back instantly as is a verdict on the suspiciousness of that, and some next steps. And we will go out and we will check the IP address that the email came from. We'll look at the phone number. We'll do a bunch of sort of checks, and we'll also really analyze the behavior in the message, because scammers have their own tells. They play on urgency and fear and
Right.
love and greed,
Yep.
and they impersonate agencies and brands and people that we trust. And so, the goal with Scamwise was really about, can we just put something out there for the community that they can use to start to practice these behaviors around getting a second opinion, around verifying, around what you call healthy skepticism,
Hmm.
and put it into play a little bit in their daily lives all the time. And it's been great. Today we're the fastest growing scam checker in the country. We
Oh,
see
nice.
thousands of suspicious messages a day, and we're really proud that we're helping people sort of identify potential scams, but also, we get feedback sometimes that, we've also helped people realize when something is actually real. We had somebody who left a testimonial last week that said, I had gotten this refund check, and I wasn't sure it was actually a refund check, and I put it in, and it said, this looks legitimate. Here's what to do to make sure. And I did, and it turned out it was a real refund check, so I cashed it. So sometimes it can work both ways. It
Yeah.
can help you understand what's bad, but can also help you focus on what might be real and potentially good.
So you said a few things. It helps you get a second opinion, which is good because it makes you stop and think, and which is going to, if you've gotten into an emotional state, more chance you're going to get out of that emotional state. Um, but then with this refund that this person put in, and it said that it actually looked legitimate, here's some next steps. So what would those next steps have been?
Typically it sort of depends on what the actual scam is, but typically it's a version of what we call sort of a second channel verification.
Okay.
Oh, you got a text that says Wells Fargo is telling you there's fraud on your account,
Mhm.
and gives you a kind of a strange phone number to call back. Well, instead of calling that number, flip your card over and call the number on the back of the card and ask
Okay.
what's going on. It will tell you to, similarly, if you've gotten an email from a brand that you may have used in the past that looks like
Mhm.
it's at maybe it's from Apple, it's saying you need to reset your credentials.
Right.
It will point you to the support, the actual numbers to call back and to verify. So things like this, where it's a second channel verification, um, uh, give you a reason to sort of pause and not just sort of blindly follow the instructions that are coming at you in the moment, and to sort of step back and step out of that moment and find a different way to
Right.
verify the communication.
Okay. There's a lot of these types of products out there.
Yeah,
I I normally don't, in all honesty, I normally don't pay much attention to them.
yeah,
And same thing with, like, surveys that people
yeah,
have. Take this survey to see whether you're susceptible to falling for a scam.
yeah,
And I'm like, "Okay, so someone scores low and they think that they're good, they're not gonna fall for a scam, so they're gonna let their guard down,
yeah.
and they're not gonna think about it, and so guess what? They're gonna fall for a scam." So, I don't like those surveys. I know some people use them.
Yeah,
I just think it's better to go in the mindset of anybody. I
100%.
don't care how smart you are or whatever. I often say, scammers don't send you an IQ test
Yeah,
and then wanna see your financials to
yeah,
only go target the people on the low end of the IQ and the high end of the that has the most wealth.
that's right.
No. Now, will they do stuff on social media with different things? Absolutely. Those games, whatever, but, it's just really getting people to understand that everybody's a target and everybody can fall victim to a scam. You're human and you're emotional. Um, but the other thing with the technology and like with what scamwise is, and I'm I've never really used those, told people to use them because in my opinion, technology is not the end all be all
Yeah,
because when you read all of these statistics and you talk to a lot of different people, the number one thing they say is social engineering
yeah,
is plays a huge part in scams.
yeah,
Well, social engineering has nothing to do with technology.
yeah,
You could
yeah,
have the best technology out there, but scammers, one, will figure out a way around it,
yeah,
or they're going to use the social engineering to get you to bypass the technology.
yeah.
Right? And
Totally.
so that's the one thing, or not the one thing, that's one of the things that I really like about the way you have set up Scamwise is that you understand that
Yeah,
and that you're giving them, "Okay, well, this is what our opinion is,
yeah,
but and based on this opinion, you should go verify through these other channels."
that's right. Yeah,
And so I really like that
yeah,
because it's getting people, one, to not rely 100% on the technology. It's getting a second opinion, but then going out and gathering the information so they can make the decision whether this is legitimate or not.
absolutely. I mean, and look, we talk about in the book, there was a study that was done, with a group of PhDs who work in AI, and they were brought into a room and they were shown, deep fakes or fake images
Mhm.
next to real images. And their ability to identify what was real or fake, and these are people who live, eat, sleep, breathe AI,
Yep.
was barely better than a coin flip. Okay, so
Yeah.
I don't believe that there are people out there who just aren't susceptible to scams. I think
Right.
that's false. It's a false
Absolutely.
narrative, and we should do nothing to perpetrate that.
Yeah.
I'm just as susceptible. And I can tell you all the stories I have about me, almost falling for scams and how good they are. So this is a a wicked problem that
Mhm.
requires a multidimensional solution, and that solution
Absolutely.
is education, it's technology, it's government regulation, and we can
Mhm.
talk about that whether we want to or not. But there are things that we need to do to solve this very challenging problem. And I would say technology cannot be the only answer, and certainly scamwise doesn't present itself to be the
Right.
panacea to the problem. But what I will say is we do need better technology
Mhm.
coming at this problem, and we need more education, and we need all more of
Yeah.
everything that I just talked about because I mean, we're losing the battle right now. I mean, if we look at
Absolutely.
the data, it's off the charts in terms of how much money Americans, how much hard-earned savings Americans are losing,
Yep.
the volume, the sophistication, the average dollar amounts in scam losses
Mhm.
continues to grow. And so we've got work to do on all fronts here. And
Yeah.
part of what we're trying to do with Scamwise and Savvy is move the ball forward on the technology front for everyday people, technology that has advanced dramatically for enterprises, big companies, governments. We need to bring some of that into the family so that we can arm folks with a little bit more as they stand up to these threats. And that can't exist by itself. It has to sit alongside changes in behavior, changes in mindset, and changes in
Absolutely.
education.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I really like what you said. No one thing is the end all be all,
Yeah,
right? There definitely is a lot more technology stuff that can be done, but it's like it's it's not like you come out with this new technology and then okay, that's all we need to do. We can stop. No, you got to constantly evaluate it and enhance it. I mean, how many it seems like once a week we get notification from our mobile phones saying there's an update
yeah,
available, right?
yep,
They're patching security flaws. They're coming up with new things. The one thing I wish they would stop doing is changing the way everything is done.
yeah, I know.
It's like can you.
Because it's hard to learn the new behaviors then if
Well, it
it's
is.
always sort of moving around in the
Right.
phone and where
Yeah.
it is. Yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
tough.
But I
It's
guess
tough.
there's gotta be a reason why they do it. Maybe
Yeah,
the new technology they're implementing it doesn't work obviously the same way the old stuff does, but
sure.
I mean, just knowing that, the bad actors are gonna be out there trying to bypass,
Yeah,
that technology, but the education,
yeah,
right,
yeah.
around it and
No,
government regulations. When these people do get caught, they get sentenced to like 7 to 10 years and they're out in 3 to 5 on good
yeah,
behavior.
yeah,
What are they
yeah.
doing? They're going right back into this because they know where they can make millions of dollars,
Yeah, yeah.
you
Look,
know?
the you remember the Nigerian prince kinda email
Y
scams of sort of like the late '90s and early
Yep,
2000s, and your audience may remember those, when sort of free email came out, Hotmail and
yep,
Yahoo and things like that, these scams started to come. And the reason why those scams sort of stopped working in that form, sure, there were some technology changes. In fact, the email providers did some interesting things to do a better job of sort of
mhm,
understanding what was scams and spams. But really, it was because as a society, we educated ourselves about those scams. And they
right.
became like the punchline on like late night TV
Yes,
talk show hosts. And
yes,
like everybody kind of talked about it and understood what that scam looked like, what it sounded like. And they talked about it with each other, became kind of a joke.
yep,
And that's how we beat that scam. And the challenge we have now is that with this technology, the scammers are iterating so fast. And there isn't just like this sort of one scam that we have to figure out. It's really the entire way that these scammers work. And so,
yep,
we're not going to be successful if we don't have, a rapid educational system,
right,
constantly learning, constantly trying to understand and unpack what's happening here and teaching people new tips and tricks for how to deal with it
yep.
alongside a rapidly innovating technology ecosystem that's also helping to provide an additional layer of protection.
Absolutely, right? Yeah, it's crazy. We've got about 5 minutes, 4 or
Yeah.
5 minutes left. So, is there anything else that you want to talk about with maybe scamwise or
Yeah, sure. Scamwise, I would just say, I use it all the time. I think for your viewers and your listeners, to the extent it's helpful, there's plenty of ways to submit data to it at scamwise.com. I would say, more than that, I'm really excited to be working with a new set of partners and to really understand this ecosystem and working with folks like you to bring the broader picture um, forward around the level of problem that we have in this country. And I do think that there's a role for smarter policies here.
Mhm.
And we have to resource this problem effectively with more education in our law enforcement. We
Yeah,
need more folks who understand how these attacks work and can respond to them. We need uh, different laws that sort of categorize these perpetrators and these criminals in the right way and that allow us to prosecute them in a more
yeah,
efficient way. We need more responsibility for the big tech platforms that are trafficking this
yeah.
content to us.
Yeah, yeah,
And
absolutely. They some of them do a better job at weeding out, but I can't tell you how many I know there's scam fake profiles on Facebook that I get
Oh yeah,
friend requests from all the time,
oh yeah.
and I'm just delete, 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 and now that I've mentioned Facebook and we're on, this is gonna be out there. I hope they don't shut the account down. I got shut down about a year ago for like 3 months.
Oh, that's too bad.
And it was just like, "Come on, guys, we talk about how to prevent scams," you know?
Yeah.
But anyways,
Well,
it's,
that's what I mean, and look, we need real partners in this,
yeah,
and look, the technology platforms have a variety of incentives that they're juggling, but, without a doubt, the initial contact from scammers now is made, almost, in the majority of cases, on social media, especially for the highest dollar scams that we see. Now it will intersect with phone calls or text messages
yeah,
or over to WhatsApp or
yeah,
whatever it is. But there's a role that social media platforms can play in helping to police this content better. There's a
yeah,
role that telecommunications companies and our carriers can play in helping to police this
absolutely,
content better. Um,
absolutely.
so so everybody's got skin in this game here.
Mhm.
And this is what I like to say about digital fraud in AI. There's it would be hard to get consensus around whether AI is going to save us or destroy us or
I think it's still
disappoint us.
still
I
too new
Too
for
new,
us to
right?
figure it
So
out.
too new. So I we don't need to all agree on what the future impact of AI is. To agree on there's a real problem happening right now. And it
Mhm.
doesn't necessarily mean that AI is good or bad, but it's a side effect. It's a downside. It's
It
the dark
is, it
side
is,
of the
and we
boom.
have to look at that,
And we have to
right?
look at that. So let's we can all agree this is a problem. This is a problem that affects all of us. I don't care sort of what your politics are. I
Absolutely,
don't care
right,
where you're from. And
right,
so we can kind of hold hands as a country, as a
absolutely.
culture, and wade into this problem. And it would be good for us because I promise you, this isn't going to be the last problem from technology or the last
Nope,
problem from AI. Right. So
no,
let's get a little bit of muscle memory
right,
in working together to solve these big problems.
yeah. No, absolutely, and, a lot of times when I'm looking at, new policies, right, that they're looking at, especially in the state of Arizona, right, and they're doing a lot with, like, deed fraud here and stuff, and I
Yeah.
look at the ones that are, the bills that go in there, and I'm like, "Well, that's not gonna stop it because the
Yeah.
scammer's just gonna do this," and that's where I think a lot of policymakers, they whether I don't think they realize it until after the fact, but they just put a Band-Aid on the situation.
Totally, and they just wanna
It's
do
you
something, yeah.
have to look at it and go, "Okay, well, if I wanna do this, then how are the scammers going to get around it?
Yeah.
Are
Yeah.
you kind of have to go back to the initial point, right? I don't know if I ever shared with you our anatomy of a scam.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen
Did
it.
I? Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
We just got early on, we were always behind the 8 ball trying to talk about all these different
Yeah.
scams. And it was like, and one of my advisory board members, a brilliant guy, is the one that came up with this.
Yeah.
You know, we, we just got to talk about scams in general and how they operate. And so I think we've done an awesome job at figuring that out and really getting, these older adults to understand it.
To
But
understand it and giving them simple,
giving them
approachable language
exactly
to talk about it, right?
empowering them to be able to say, I can do this.
Yeah.
I don't have to throw away all my technology.
No.
I can use this. I feel safe. I know what I'm going to do. Right.
Yeah, and
uh,
that point, maybe that's just the last point real quick is in cybersecurity we talk about there's this type of attack called a DDoS, a denial of service attack, where a hacker will go to a website and try to throw so much traffic at it, malicious traffic at it, that good traffic can't get in and the website is sort of knocked offline, right?
yeah.
I think what's happening right now, what we're at risk of is we're getting hit with so much stuff, so
Mhm.
much noise, so much scams, that the risk for us is that we take our digital devices and we throw them in the trash.
Yeah.
And we step away and we're kind of denied the service and the power and the potential of technology.
Right.
I think the better answer is no, how do we create a world where we can sort of safely wade into the digital
Absolutely.
universe and preserve the promise of what it has for all of us in good ways and
Absolutely.
mitigate the downside?
Absolutely. So, Patrick, thank you so much for coming on. And I'm looking forward to more conversations and online and offline as well.
That's right. That's right. Well,
So,
thank
but I
you.
do have to, I'm running over a little
Yeah.
bit. Juan's going to come on here in a minute and say, you're over time. So,
No, thank you,
um,
Joyce. Thank you for the
yeah,
work that you do and really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you here.
yeah. No, thank you again, Patrick.
Take care.
All right. Take care. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining in. Wow. Lots of great information. Especially um, Patrick's on the same page as we are. It takes a lot of different roles in to try to make this, to try to put a dent in these scams. Don't forget to go to our website at roseadvocacy.org. You'll find all our social media channels. Scroll down to the bottom, sign up for the email or the mailed newsletter, and don't forget to hit subscribe so you get notifications as to what the topics are going to be next week. Brian Watson will be back with you guys next week, and then I'll be back the week after that. Take care and see you in a couple weeks. Thank you.
Well, that's all the knowledge for this episode. Tune in every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific Time on K4HD Radio at k4hd.com as Joyce explores a variety of knowledge so you have the power to make scam protection your healthy habit. And until then, feel free to reach out to Joyce and let's talk about scams.